Okay, we're live. Welcome everybody to the latest edition of the Scholar Gypsies. I'm Gerry O'Neill from the West Awake, and I am delighted to have as my guest today Patrick Murphy. He's the spokesperson for the Irish South and West Fish Producers Organisation. Patrick is a long time, all his adult life, a fisherman down in Castletown Bear. It's in the fishing is in the blood, I'd say. And just before we get going, for anyone that's joining, just if you haven't liked and subscribed to the channel, just do it now. Um, the fishing industry is one I'm going to be taking a look into in detail through my writing and some videos over the next while, because it's not just topical, but it's historically an industry that's got a raw deal. I think most of people viewing this would have vague notions about the truth of that, but not so much of the detail. So Patrick, welcome. And I suppose, Patrick, maybe just start by giving us a bit of background about yourself as a fisherman, what type of fishing you do, and how long you've been in the industry.
Right, thanks, Gerry, and hello to everybody who's listening. And do what the man says, please, like and support. We need to get the word out. It really is important that we get this type of media out to people, that you have a different viewpoint to the mainstream medias, and hopefully this type of media will become mainstream and you'll get the truth. Yeah, so my name is Patrick Murphy. I come from Skibbereen, where I was born and reared and bred. But my family is from Hare Island, or Inishudderskjol. It's a little island from Connemore, or in between Baltimore and Skull. So we still have a family ancestral home inside there. My brother lives there, and bit of land, so a few cattle and stuff like that. I started fishing with my father in a little timber punt at the age of 7, hauling shrimp pots in Roaring Water Bay. I got to love it. I liked it, and I became a professional fisherman when I finished my education, secondary education in the Brothers in Delisle and Skibbereen. And I went professionally fishing inside in a small half decker, 27 feet long, um, around the islands, the 100 Carbery Islands of Shirkin, Cape, Skeames, Hare Island, Alon Ban, another story for another day, Gerry, and those areas. And I got involved in aquaculture. We started delving into and diversifying into mussel growing on long lines, and my sons are at that now at the moment. So I'm all in my life involved making a living from the fishing industry. And trust me when I tell you, I know what it's like to open up the wallet at the end of the week and go, good God, what am I going to do? How am I going to pay the bills next week? That is the life of a fisherman. It is a very difficult life. And plus, there's definitely 4 occasions that I've used up. So, like the cat with 9 lives, I'm hoping I have 5 left. But definitely 4 occasions I could say that I shouldn't be here. And that's a guaranteed fact. It was the will of the man above that kept us on the planet. The other thing that I just say to you is that I've always been involved, because my father was involved in politics. He was in the Labour Party, the man was, for the sins.
God
And
bless him.
he brought me into that social type of thinking, even though we were capitalists and entrepreneurs and had to make our own money. So we always tried to look out for our fellow man and person around us. Genuinely was instilled in me. So I got involved in the political side and lobbying side of fishermen from the age of 20. So when we started up the lobster fishermen's group in Roaring Water Bay, we had no piers, no facilities, nothing. We were going on a strand. For to land 1 ton of mussels, we'd handle it 30 times. So 1 ton became 30 because we no cranes, no forklifts, no nothing. So we went into the lobbying game and we lobbied for a pier, the first one in the country. It went from that, from the inactions or the wrong way that our department did their business, and which was registering the Irish fleet. So when we joined Europe, Gerry, and you can stop me if I'm starting to ramble on, we'll try and keep all of this connected. When we joined the European Union in 1973 in the Treaty of Accession, our control over our waters was out to 12 miles, right? And this is important. So after the UK began cod wars, they were called, with Iceland for fishing in their waters, Iceland kicked up. It became a world story, and the United Nations got involved, and they decided to protect more waters and reduce the amount of international waters. by giving a 200-mile zone around each country who were connected to the water, who had rights to the water out from their shoreline. Now, of course, it overlapped, so you didn't get quite out to 200, whereas in our, and I've sent you this, Gerry, out into the Atlantic, we can go 200 miles away from us, but we go up as far as Rockall, where the Scots have claimed, because from their island, one of their islands, they're claiming Rockall because it's closer, it's less than 200 miles to that island off the coast of Scotland than Rockall. So they've claimed that territorial waters around that. And these are important points because in 1976, when this happened, the European Union's treaty did not cover those waters. So they had to incorporate a policy to control the access, the people that were going in there, the amount of fish that was coming out, and who would get access to it. So that's when the common fishery policy was started. And how they started it off was they went to each member state that wanted to go fishing inside their member state now, inside Europe, who was a member who had signed up in the Treaty of Accession and before, who was fishing inside the waters, how much fish they were catching, their fleets, and they documented that over 5 years. At the end of 5 years, they came back with a document to each country and they said, this is your share of this species in this area, and this is what you have to catch. Okay?
And this is outside. This is outside the original 12-mile zone, I take it.
Yes, yeah. This is 12 to 200 because we only gave those boats who were inside in the European EEC at the time access, which we controlled between 6 and 12 miles. So they had preferential treatment. Any other country could fish outside 12 miles. The Russians could come in, the Japanese, the Chinese, anybody from anywhere. They were considered international waters. But when that was done, and this is international treaties now, right, that had an impact all over the world. So each country was setting out their own stall, right? This is huge negotiations. So what they promised Ireland back then was the Hague preferences, right? A preference to the country whose waters the other boats were coming into. They had no right to go in there, but under their accession into Europe, then we became a family, and the family decided, well, this is the family members that can fish there. This is the amount of fish that you've caught in the last 5 years. And when they looked at the figures, Ireland was one of the smallest shareholders in their own waters, right? Because we didn't have the massive markets. We were dependent on sending our fish to Europe. Because we could catch so much fish, our boats weren't as modern and able to travel like the nomadic fleets of the other countries because they had their waters fished out. So they had damaged their own stocks in their own waters, so they needed to get fish elsewhere. Spain is fishing all over the world, like they don't just fish in European waters. They're in African waters, they're down off American waters, they're everywhere. They were a nomadic fleet, and still to this day, off the coast of Morocco and places, we have European fleets fishing in those waters, right? So what's happened now, and in the last, we'll say basically really badly, 21 years, Ireland has been squeezed out of its own waters. And just to put some figures on this, the fish that were taken from our waters under the calculations done by the Marine Institute was around 1.2 billion. Ireland's share of that is around 200 million. But we don't catch all that fish in our own waters. We catch it a little bit out in UK waters, whatever else. But in Northwest waters, 1.2 billion, we get the smallest share, right? And what protected us then was if the stocks went down, if the scientific advice said there's too much fish being caught in these stocks, then the coastal states, us or the member states that are closest to the resource, like under United Nations laws of the sea, would not get the same cut. We'd still get a cut, but not to the same degree as the other countries. So they'd take more of the pain rather than us, right? And to allow us on our fleet to survive. Why? Because we don't fish in their waters. They're coming into ours. They're taking so much fish, then you have to attribute the reductions in the species to them because they're taking them, right? So basically, by their hoovering up of the fish stocks go down. Because we have the smallest share, we go out of business. Just to give a couple of examples for people to understand what I'm talking about here. Common sole. You've all seen them, sole mariniere, cooked in butter, flatfish, beautiful fish to eat. Off our coastline, we have loads of these fish. Unfortunately, the way that the share out was given was Belgium had better people recording their fish stocks back then, and they've ended up with 450 tons, right? Out of probably 550. And our share is 28 tons this year.
So let me just get that straight for myself and people maybe that are watching. So what you're saying there, and that 1.2 billion, is that all types of fish?
Yeah, all types of
So
fish.
so we have, based on what I'm saying, is less than maybe in that 12 to 200 mile zone. We're that is Irish territorial water. We're only we only have a quota to fish about 15% of the fish that are in that water.
Yeah, that's basically, but it's getting less because they were the figures now of a couple of years ago, but they've been dramatically reduced. So the stocks we had last year was around 100 and I'm trying to look to the brain now to calculate this, around 180,000 tons, which is very little, to be honest. Really small amount of tons.
Why does
But
Belgium have such an why would Belgium be given such a preferential treatment in Atlantic waters when it doesn't have much, like it has very little of a coastline itself, like I would have thought, and it's nowhere near the Atlantic.
I love these questions because this makes it really easy to explain. So, like I said, when we designed the common fishery policy, they looked to see who was catching what and where. So Belgium put down the figures to say that they were catching a massive proportion of the sole in Irish waters, right? And we didn't. We didn't put down the amount of figures that we were catching, right? For one reason or another, they got more than us. But what they did was, despite 50 years of change, nothing's changed really. The share stayed the same. So climate change changes, the fish movement changes, the fishing technology changes, the countries change. This is the only plan that I know of that stands for 50 years and never gets a real revision. The only revision that comes in is more regulations for the fishermen to make sure that they're abiding by the laws that are set by Europe. And these change every year. So that's how they have it. Basically, they said they had more fish and were catching more of these fish in 1976 to 1980, 81. And so they had it on paper saying, this is how much fish we catch. And the European Union then, in the policy, was based on a thing called relative stability. So relative stability is to keep the country stable on their catches. So whatever you were depending on to support your coastal communities, what you were fishing, then you get to keep them to keep supporting your coastal communities. Now, that didn't take into any consideration of population changes in countries, or as I said, climate change, or invasive species, or warming waters, or anything like that. They kept the same policy for 50 years. So they get to keep what they have. The only thing that changes those figures is if the overall stock biomass, the size of the species um, population, if that reduces, then your catches also reduce. And the scientists, so they give around 20% of a stock, right, is normally what you would get. So if they estimate that there's 10,000 tons of those fish in that area, you get to catch around 20%. So you get around 2,000 tons. That's the way the scientists work. Why? Because fish don't spawn one to one. They have thousands of eggs, right? And the way they calculate it is on juveniles and recruitment. So how much fish come back into the stock. So they evaluate, well, if you take 20% out of the different year classes, next year they'll be recovered. The fish that were smaller will get bigger. There'll be new babies come in, and the population keeps sustainably regenerating itself. Do you get that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now, but just one question there before we move on from that is that quota system that was designed basically from 76 to 80, 81, is that breakdown the one that's still in place in 2025?
Yeah, that's the problem. So no matter what changes or the stocks go down. So we met with our Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, and he gave us some statistics that he had picked up. Now, he didn't tell us where he got them from. So what he said in the last number of years, in the short number of years, the stocks altogether, the cumulative amount of fish in our waters was around 8 million tons, right? Of all species. He said that his information is that those stocks now have been so depleted, they're down around 2 million. So they're down by down to 1/5 of what they were. But we didn't catch that fish because we only catch 10 to 15% of
The
that
fish in that
6
water.
million. So it's definitely other countries that are taking so much, even though they're following scientific advice, they're fishing down the stocks, even though there's changes. So everybody's heard about bluefin tuna and how much work they are and how good they are, but they're an invasive species in Ireland. You see the videos; they're eating all the fish all around them. You see them eating, and everybody going, "That's fantastic." That's not good for a fisherman. If you had an animal like that coming on eating sheep or chickens or anything inside the farm, you'd be told there's a problem there, you know. So just to understand how the fishing share out works now, Gerry, we'll use bluefin tuna as an example of how corrupt it is. Okay, so I went to Dubrovnik. I think it was in 2019, and I attended the ICAT meetings. This is the world governing body over tuna all around the world. And at that meeting, my eyes were opened, right? And basically, when a stock recovers, again, it goes back to the historic nature, the share out, who had it and when. Okay. So bluefin was determined in that time to be just coming on into recovery, and it was starting to recover. It was an endangered species up until then because water warms and everything else. They've moved into Irish waters and they're cleaning up. They're eating massive amounts of fish. They're definitely contributing to the reduction of that 8 million biomass stock, right? But we're not allowed to catch them. We have to stay away from them. We get a share, a bycatch share. So to give some figures again, when I started looking into this, the quota for Europe, just Europe, was around 12,000 tons for the European fleet, all of us together. Out of that, we had 34 tons to catch, but we had to share that with 5 other countries with a first come, first catch basis. Do you understand me?
So
Yeah, so we'd only 34 ton, they had 12,000. Now, let me finish this point now because this is going to shock you. Those fish have recovered so much, right? The amount you're allowed to catch now is 25,000 tons, right? For the European fleet. So how much do you think we have? Now, there's an increase of 13,000. So we've gone from a share of 34 to a share of what?
no idea.
What do you think? Thousands? Would be fair, wouldn't it? 74. This year it'll be 90 tons.
90 tons
Yeah,
out
so
of.
the rest of Europe get 13,000 ton of an increase. We get to catch maybe another 10 or 15 tons of that fish.
What's the explanation for that? That we don't have the vessels, we don't have the infrastructure.
Absolutely not.
But what rationale are they giving back to the Irish fishing industry? Like about
it's ours and we're keeping it, and we don't care that we catch them in your waters.
But this raises a point. The Irish territorial waters. How much sea area are we talking about here?
880,000 square kilometers.
So that is roughly 10 times the landmass of Ireland, or more, maybe.
But you might show the maps that I showed. You see, Ireland and England are sitting on a plateau called the continental shelf. So, you know, our islands are sitting on rock, right? Mm-hmm. So it's shallow. So most of it stays down around 200 meters below, you know, whereas off the other countries, it goes to 500 or 600, right? So it drops away. Well, the European Union brought in a law that you cannot trawl, you can't put fishing nets on the bottom below 400 meters. So then the fishing grounds are Ireland. So not only do we have the waters, but we have the most productive ground. Again, I'm going to explain this very easily to people. You go looking at the Golden Vale in Kerry and you see all the green grasslands. And then you look up into the mountains and Derry and Donegal and the harsh conditions up there. But it's not equal. the land is more valuable where you have green pastures, good soil content. Look down east and you look at tillage and everything else. So there's a disadvantage there. But yet they count it all the same in Europe. All the waters are the waters. But of the productive waters in Europe, I'd say we have a third. So the fish are here. The people want to come here to catch the fish. They're not off their shorelines. Yet we have to give it up. We have the smallest share. Another figure before I lose my train of thought. We had thousands of boats around our shoreline. People will remember and see the pictures. Boats couldn't even fit inside the harbours. There were so many of them. Now go there. There's no boats. So we'll just deal with the last 20 years because of Brexit, because of falling fish stocks, like I said. Our fleet that numbered 400, just over 50 feet in length. 50 feet in length is not long. You can step your house and you'll see it. 50 feet is nothing, right? That's a small boat, but we consider that's the offshore fleet that goes out beyond 6 miles. We had 400 of them on the Irish register for fishing boats. Now, in 2025, we have 140. So that's a loss of 260 families because it's family-run businesses from around our coastline. But those boats have been replaced by other foreign boats coming into our, taking up their room, catching the fish. It's not right what's happening to an Irish people. This is where the fishermen are only ones that access the fish and are the tools to go out and catch it. But it's your fish. It's a state asset. This is no different from gold in the ground, folks. You know. And
Now
others, yeah.
tell me about tell me, let's break down the ports and, you brought up the 400 there. I was on the Bordishkiwara site there, and they talk a number of 1,200. And I assume the differential here is in the size of boat. And just talk a little bit about the registration of the boats and what that means in terms of access to quotas.
Yeah, so look, I started off, as I said, in a 27-meter or 27-foot boat, right? So what's that in meters? We'll work it out off the top of my head now.
That's about 9 meters.
Around 9 meters, yeah. Small boat, right? So the fish I could access were primarily crab, lobster, shrimps. You might do a bit of gill netting, show out a net and pull it in, and a bit of monk and different species of fish. But we'd be limited to what we could catch. But Ireland is the only country that under Article 17 distributes the fish in the whitefish sector on a very easy to understand way. So I mentioned 18-meter boats, right, and 50-foot boats. So under 18 meters, 17.99, you get 1 share of the fish. Over that, you get 2 shares, right? So it's a little bit tough for a boat that's 17 meters. He gets 1 ton of fish, and a boat 18.1 meters gets 2 ton of fish, of the same fish, right? But a punt 12 feet long gets the same as well as the 17-meter boat, right? Which might be only 4 meters in length, right? We'll say. So that has the same. And it's also then the same for a boat that's 18 meters. It gets the same fish as a boat 26 meters or 27 meters in length. Do you know what I mean? So the reason why you build bigger boats isn't because you get a bigger share. It's because of the purpose of that, to build and catch fish, to go where you go. An easy way, again, to describe it for people, you have all different sizes of tractors. So you have a small tractor and a big tractor. The big tractor will go in and tillage. The small tractor will feed the cattle or whatever else. It's the same with a Hymac. You have small diggers who are doing small jobs, and you have big diggers who are doing big jobs. So you give the purpose-built jobs to the small fella and the bigger jobs to the big fella. Like, you wouldn't do it any other way because it wouldn't work. And it's the same in the fishing industry. But you're not restricted in the small area to the big boats. Every man I know that's in a big boat started in a small boat, and he worked his way up. That's the way it works. So you're never precluded from going from one section into the other. It depends on what way you want to fish. So the big boatmen will be out at sea for maybe 240 days of the year that they won't see their families. Whereas a small boatman will normally be at home every night with his family, or he might be doing a bit of farming or something else. That's what we did. Like I said, I went into aquaculture. So we ran a farm, we fished seasonally around our shoreline, and then we went into mussels. And if that wasn't enough to make a crust, I went into the building sites. So that's what you do as an inshore man. It's always coupled with one or the other. But the bigger boats are more specialized. But the cost of a big boat to get into it is millions, and the cost now into a smaller boat is hundreds of thousands. So again, it depends on your entry level and how ambitious you are. But the way the fish is shared out genuinely is fair. The smaller boats get 1 ton, the bigger boats get 2 ton. And whenever we can level the pitch, whenever we can give 1 ton to the small fellas or 1 ton to the big fellas, depending on seasonality, like to describe that is, if a small boat is only going to get an opportunity due to weather and seasons to catch this fish, say in 3 months, then you give him a bigger quota for those 3 months and he gets less later on because he's not going to catch it. So we manage the fisheries that way as well. Now,
But
pelagics is different.
but
Pelagics is
you're
way different.
but you're all operating on. Are these non? These are all non. These are all
Irish.
quoted fish?
Yeah, these are all quoted fish. Yeah, there's non-quoted
So
species there as well too, like
right.
crab, lobster, shrimp, velvet crabs, the different types, spider crab, um, crayfish. So there is a few that the small boats will target, like me when I was, non-quota. But the problem is they could eventually become quota, because they are also suffering effects. You see, when a big boatman gets out of the big boat, or if that's gone, those 260 boats, they might drop down into the smaller activities and go fishing there if they want to. They fish on their own. So that has happened as well too, and that puts more pressure on the smaller fella. So there's a
And
knock-on effect.
did these quotas are these quotas affect within that original 12 mile zone? Are there international boats in our 12 within 12 miles of our coastline?
Yeah, they kept the rights. We cite. So yes, there is certain preferences for certain countries that can come in between 6 and 12. We've we've an agreement with England. I'm trying to think of it now, or the Voisinage agreement, and they're actually allowed to fish between 3 and 6 miles along a shoreline. Yeah, yeah. So yes, definitely. We do get to go to other countries to fish, but we have to have quotas, strict rules to get there. One of the major fisheries that we do have is albacore tuna that we go down into the Bay of Biscay. But the minute our boats go down there, the French, the Spanish, they're all complaining in the media to say, oh, look at these big Irish boats coming down for maybe 8 to 12 weeks of the year trying to catch fish. But there's no complaints about their boats coming up into our waters for 12 months of the year. It's crazy.
One of the things that you mentioned to me when we were talking on the phone was, the port infrastructure in Ireland. I suppose when people are looking, think of Galway here, which is very close to the city centre. When you're driving past it, you kind of look and you kind of assume they're Irish boats. Give us a flavour of what's going on in the port sector, especially Castletown Bear, Killybegs, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's all over now. You see, after Brexit, they got such a scare, those countries, that they might be kicked out of UK waters. They look for new fishing grounds. And they are taking up their opportunities to the 100% now that they mightn't have been before because they might have been in the North Sea, right? So now they've moved, they've shifted. Displacement is what we call it. So I'll give an example to people. If you come down to Castletown Bay on a Friday, you'll see Arctic lorries queuing up to take fish with Spanish registrations on them. And there's around 30 of them come into our village, every week. And they do it over the weekend. So these boats, they come from France, Germany, Belgium, the UK, right? Predominantly. And they come into our port, same boats, and they load the fish straight into the back of the lorry. They don't touch the ground, they don't go into a factory. They're iced in boxes and straight into the back of the lorry. But before they put the fish in, they take the food out that's been transported from Spain to go into the boats. So the only thing they take from Ireland is diesel, and we get caught for the carbon tax on that. But anyway, that's more of it. But just to put figures on it, so these boats would fill an Arctic or maybe two in one landing. They have so much fish on board their boats. Whereas an Irish boat will come in, same size, same way of fishing, and it might take four Irish boats to fill one Arctic lorry. And people say, well, oh, that's because they're better fishermen. I wish it were true, to be honest, because at least then you'd suffer the indignation of what you're looking at. No, they have so much fish and so much quota in our waters. They can fish away happily. Once they find fish, they just fill the boat. Whereas with the Irish system, they have a small share every month of maybe 25 different species. So to make their living, they have to keep going around getting a bit of everything, right? Moving around the place to make it viable, to make sure that there's enough fish in the hole to catch. But if they're unlucky enough to catch too much of the wrong species, they're arrested. So it's the only industry on the planet that the better you do, the more liable as an Irish person you are to be arrested and criminalized. Whereas the boat alongside you, the foreign boat, will have maybe 10 times more of the fish that you have caught legally able to land as you. And then they come in with that fish, no problems, into the back of a lorry, away they go. So to put figures on it, we would say they're landing 5 to 6 times more fish than we're landing into our own port of Castletown Bay. BIM have these figures on the business of seafood, and it will actually show you, the millions of euros worth of fish that's been landed in Castletown Bay, and you think, oh God, those fellas are flying it. But then you look at who's landing it and who's benefiting it from it, and it isn't the Irish. It's
And are we charging them an elevated port fee for the honor of this? Goodness
no. Again, people listening to this will be saying these fellas are spoofing, these fellas are telling lies. Absolutely, no. It's the opposite. They get better terms and conditions in our own waters because they just pop in and land and go away again. Whereas we get charged for tying up and staying in the port. So we get punished for not being out fishing. We get bigger harbour dues, And to give an example, one fellow rang me the other day and he says, you're not going to believe this. I've got a bill in the door for the size of 2 pallets inside in Danish in the island that was bought for fishermen and to develop the industry off 2 farmers. It was compulsory purchased off them. They had no choice. 800 euros rent for that square footage inside there, for the size of 2, what's that, 4 by 2, so 8 by 4, and 800 euros just to put their nets on. And if they spill out or go over that, you're going to get charged more or penalized, or maybe the nets will be taken off you and dumped. People don't really realize because we're always talking about this and they're going, nah. Look, they're exaggerating. They're saying they're going to be out of business next year and sure they're never out of business. I've heard it all. I've heard from German people and saying, oh, look, the Irish are only looking for a handout. They don't want to fish. They don't want money. But I can prove what I'm saying to be correct. It's called marine traffic. And if you go into that in an app, you'll see all the boats named, foreign boats. You'll see lads putting up these pictures online now and again. But you can see this in real time where the boats are, and you can see the Spanish fleet, the French fleet, and the English fleet fishing in an area, and they never move. Then you'll see an Irish boat coming into that area for a day or two, and then he's gone again. It's not that he can't catch the fish. He's caught his quota, and he has to move off and go somewhere else, because if he stays there like them, he'll catch too much of the fish he's not allowed to land, and he lands, he's arrested. So another way of describing this, Gerry, is you have 5 Spanish boats and 5 Irish boats, right? And they're all the same size and they're fishing in the same area, right? So the 5 Irish boats on any calendar month, you can look up their logbook and see exactly how much fish of the different species they're allowed to catch. But you can't do that with the Spanish boats.
Why not?
Because they're not given the fish that way. They're given the fish as they need it. So if they go out and they fill the boat, they get 20 ton or 30 ton a month. They ring home and they say, listen, I've 30 ton a month got. And they go, yeah, okay, we'll send you the paperwork to cover that. Whereas right alongside them, the Irish boat for that particular month might have 10 ton. So you've got the Spanish boats on one side that have an unlimited amount of catch. and they can interchange that and swap it from one boat to the other and transfer it. Whereas in the Irish, no, that's your lot. If you catch 10 ton, if there's 5 boats outside, let me explain it like this. The Irish 5 boats each have 10 ton each, right? But if one fella catches 5 and the other fella catches 9 and the other fella catches 10, and even that's 5, 9, and 10, that's 6 ton under the 30, right? He can't give that to the other 2 boats.
So they can't swap. They can't swap.
No. So if the other 2 boats catch 11.5 ton, they have a flexibility of 10%. So they can legally go up to 11, but they have to pay it back. They can't keep it like. But legally speaking, if they go to 11 ton, 100 kilos, right? Even though there's fish in the other boats to cover it, they're arrested. We had a boat that was arrested because he had 164 kilos of cod over his quota for the month, right? And he made a mistake. He tried to land the fish and get paid for it, and he cheated. And there's no doubts about it. The man cheated, but he was desperate. He put the cod down as whiting. And people say, oh, well, he's guilty. Then, that's tough shit, right? But the problem is that the man put his hand up, admitted his guilt. He got no leniency in the court because I'll tell you what he was fined. He was fined 3,000 euros for incorrectly filling the logbook by not putting down the 164 kilos of fish. And they fined him 11,000 euros in a fine for that 164 kilos. Now, people say, well, he broke the law. But if he was treated the same as the Spanish boats, that would have to be 164 ton over his entire allocation at the end of the year. But he's criminalized different to everybody else. He's criminalized for that 1 month. So next month, if he goes out and he only catches 300 ton of cod, but he had 500, he can't write it off. He can't balance between the 2 months. He gets screwed.
Yeah, so your quota's split out month to month. So he couldn't, like, a normal way of dealing with that would be to reduce his quota for the following year, or some other way than arrest, I would have assumed.
Yeah. So now remember, 164 kilos is 4 boxes of fish.
Yeah.
And he paid 15,000 in fines for that. Now, in France and the other countries, the way they would treat that same offense is they take the fish off him. Right? And they would fine him maybe 1,000 or 2. And they give the fish to a charity, right? That's logical. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for that. If you do get fined, then you get a financial penalty, set one, that'll increase as you infringe. So at least you're giving a chance to balance. But we're given no flexibility in this, Gerry. We're treated completely different in our own waters than anybody else. And I know that let me get this out now as well too, because as you said, we could be talking about this for months. I'm just going to give you an example. In Ireland, we have a legal system that you go before a judge or a jury of your peers, right? And they listen to the evidence, and there has to be evidence, and then you're criminalized based on the presentation of that clear evidence, right? No equivocation, has to be 100%, right? You have to be guilty. There can't be any latitude, right? It has to be on evidence, right? Not for fishermen. A fisherman is prosecuted on the balance of probabilities. You probably did commit the act. We can't prove it, but the information we have points to the fact that you did do it, right? Now, has anybody ever read Agatha Christie or those novels like where all along to the last chapter it was he did it, and you think, well, under our system, yeah, the fisherman did it, and that's it, you're guilty, and there's no chance to finding out what really happened or whatever else. It's based on the judgment. And to give an example of that, you would have seen it in the papers. There was a factory went through a 10-year court nightmare, right? 10 years, where fishery officers went into them and they actually tampered with the system inside there. This is all admitted now. This is not false testimony. This is true. And the only reason that they managed to get the truth out was there was an independent other officer in there from the NSAI, right? And they were in charge of the scales and stuff like that. So their report completely contradicted the fishery officers. So the judge got both sides of the tale. Only for that, that factory would have been prosecuted and deemed guilty because there was no other evidence there. This is the jeopardy that our fishermen are under. This doesn't apply to anybody else. Now, this is the last bit I'll tell you. If you get penalty points on a car, right, you get a 3-year time to write them off. If in those 3 years you get another set of penalty points, then the first set stands for the 3 years and they run out in 3 years' time, whereas the second set stands from that day. Not with fishermen. You get 3-year penalty points, right? If you get the second set of penalty points 2 years and 11 months into the first set, the clock resets for the sixth, and it'll wait 6 years to clear. If those are appointed to your boat, right, which in Ireland it's appointed to the person, Road Traffic Act, just to the person, but in fisheries it's assigned to your asset, your boat as well. So the person gets penalty points and your asset gets penalty points. If you sell the license of the boat and the boat separately, the points get multiplied. So the points go with your license and they go with the boat, right? This is the system that's in fishermen. Now, this is the best bit, folks. You can imagine somebody goes into prison and they pay their debt to society and they come out a free man, right? You're starting from scratch. Not with a fisherman. If a fisherman loses his license, if he gets a certain amount of points, everything that he's worked for and every accreditation, every skill, every document that he has or skipper or qualification is stripped away from him. And he can never, ever, ever get them back. No matter what he does, he can never become a qualified fisherman again. He is punished for his living days. Can you imagine that? And then you're talking about people that criminalize you on a balance of probability. Do you know anybody else that would put up with that under that law that would be segregated? We went to the human rights. They didn't even want to talk to us because they knew it was crazy. This is how we're being treated in our own country.
Well, that's just every story you've told so far ties back to one particular issue, probably, and it's how bad it sounds to me is that you have no representation in the political arena, or if you do, their negotiations in this arena have been terrible for Irish fishermen. Would you go along with that? And that seems to be going back for not just this government, but
yeah,
5, 6, 7.
I'm smiling, lads, because if we don't smile, we'll be on our knees crying. This is really important to me. I'm a fisherman through and through. So I'm going to just back up what Gerry's saying there now. Doesn't people think this is incredible and couldn't be happening? So we're going to look at Brexit and England leaving the European Union, right? And what happened there. And this is real simple to understand. When the United Kingdom, Scotland, and all those countries left, they fell out of the common fishery policy. They resigned. So what happened? United Nations laws of the sea was the law they followed. They got their fish back. So all the fish that the other countries were catching inside in their sovereign waters were no longer being able to be taken by the other countries. Everything had to be given back to the United Kingdom. All the fish inside there. So that would have led to huge displacement, vessels that were from Norway and Belgium and France and Spain and everywhere that would have been kicked out of the UK waters would either had to return home or go where? Into Irish waters. So we said that can't happen. There's displacement. We met with Barnier. I gave him a paper and I said this will be the devastation completely of our Irish industry. And the way I described it was if you had a football pitch and each team played every few hours on the pitch, the grass would be grand. But if you put all those people, the 10 teams, say, that would have played during the day on for the time of one match, there'd be nothing left of the grass. It'd be just mud. Everybody trample it, right? So that raised the danger, okay? So now we know that displacing fleets into Irish waters is bad. So we had to do a deal. But the deal was done was, right? Yes, we acknowledge England's right now to get more fish. But because Ireland is part of the European Union, not only do we not get fish back, we have to give more. And the Spanish gave our fish, the French gave our fish, we gave our fish. We ended up paying 40% of that bill. It destroyed us. We gave away a quarter of our mackerel. So that proves what I'm saying is correct. When you ask me, are we being treated badly? Absolutely. We were again the bargaining chip by our government, and they said it on the news. You all heard it. There was more considerations. Yes, the fishermen got a bad deal. What will we do? We'll find, and this is the Taoiseach's words, folks, we will help out the fishermen until we find a more permanent solution. Now, the last time that language was used was by Nazi Germany when they were exterminating the Jews. And that's a fact.
Tell me
So
this
what
now.
they did was,
I just want to clarify something there now. You're brought in the UK there and Brexit. Are the UK now fishing? Are the UK fishing in Irish territorial waters from that 12 to 200?
yeah,
And basically, that's a concession from Brexit that other countries, other European countries, are using their Irish quota of fishing in Irish waters to pay that bill.
yeah,
Is that correct?
that's correct.
So it's us that's paying the bill.
Yeah, they paid from some fish from their own waters, and they gave back fish that they were catching in UK waters as part of the bill. So yes, there was a reduction in how much fish they could get in the UK waters, which they were going to have to give back anyway. But they counted that part of their payment. In other words, the UK didn't travel to the Belgian waters, the French waters, the Spanish waters to take up more opportunities. They didn't. The French and the Belgians and the others gave back opportunities that they had in English waters and in our waters.
So, and just roughly speaking, how much are you able to quantify how much the UK are fishing in our waters post Brexit in terms of the tonnage of any particular species of fish?
Yeah, I suppose they're up to nearly 800 or 900 tons of porcupine prawns. So you can work out. So we'll say 800 ton, right? And the value per kilo can go as high as 40 euros.
Now, just on that,
40,000 by 800. Work that. What's 40,000 by 800?
I don't know, but we'll say the 800 tons. We'll say 900 tons. What's the Irish quota for that?
3.2 million is what it is. So they get 3.2 million worth of prawns inside the porcupine.
Right, and what do we have?
In the porcupine, we'd have a little bit more. We'd have maybe 4 or 5 million. Actually, no, it's 32 million, is it? Hang on. I'll have to do the sums. 40,000. 800. Yeah, 32 million. Sorry. Right. It's even better when I work it out. Yeah. So they get 32 million worth of prawns at the highest value now, right? They can be depleted, but they get 32 million worth of prawns in the porcupine bank as well. Yeah. None of these figures were ever done, Gary, because or Gerry, because they couldn't. We've asked for the figures, but they won't do them.
So basically, just get my head around this. If the UK were not fishing that 32 million, we would be fishing that.
We would, but you see, because of the share out, we'd have to give it to the Spanish and the French, who also have a share in their own water.
Right. So it wouldn't actually. It actually wouldn't come out to us.
So you've nailed it, right? Under the United Nations laws of the sea, under what happened with what they agreed with England, yes, would be the answer to that. Of course we get it back, because England got it back. Why are we being treated differently? Oh no, you have to give it to those countries. You have to take it off the Irishmen and make them richer, our fish, while we go out of business.
How much are all of these quotas, in your estimation, costing the Irish exchequer per year in what all of these foreign vessels countries fishing in our waters? Is this
a billion?
A billion a year?
I'd say a billion, yeah, because You see, when you land the fish, there's an increased value of that as well too. So it doubles in value or triples, or when you go to a restaurant. So you're talking about money that would be generated for our country, a billion a year. So that since we've been in the common fishery policy, we've given Europe around 50 billion. So when you hear these exaggerated stories and fellas in the far and they're on the far right and stuff like this, no, they're actually telling the truth. But 50 billion now would be a fair estimate. That would be, I would believe, in what I know on figures, we're losing from our fishermen that we could have every year for our country, a billion a year. Like, we're what do they say now? We're no longer taking money from Europe. We're actually we're providing more.
We're net
Yeah,
providers.
we're bigger contributors. We're net contributors. Isn't that what it is? That's the wording.
And
Net
would,
contributors. Yeah.
and
So
would you say
and the fish isn't included in that, folks.
and would you say we're net contributors from the areas of Irish industry like farming and fishing
Oh,
who are
absolutely.
paying that bill?
Yeah. So we get cap payments, but we're giving more than we're getting. You know what I mean? We're giving up more rights. We don't even produce sugar in our own country anymore, lads. We can't dig the peat out of the ground to grow horticulture. We have to import it from Germany.
Hmm.
What's going on is genuinely because our business, because food is completely devalued between everything else in our economy. And people say, well, that makes no sense. Well, I'll explain it to you. Go and talk to your parents, go and talk to your grandparents, and ask them to look back at their wage salaries and what percentage of their salaries was going on food. And when I asked my father this, he was saying a third, easily. And we're all talking about the cost of living crisis and everything else. But food, your stable diet, your spuds, your butter, your meat, your chicken, your fish, is gone down, whereas your luxuries have gone up. So when I was a kid, I'd go into the shop with 10 pence and I'd buy a bag of crisps and a shot of sweets. You go into a shop now, right? You buy a bag of crisps as €1. But you go into the butcher and what was €3 or €4 a kilo before is maybe now 5 or 6 in the same time period. So we're driving down the price of food. We're driving down the producers. That's why you see
Well,
farmers.
well. One thing I'd say where I might push back on that, we're driving down the price of food. Um, Good quality fish and meat has
Yeah,
got very expensive in
yeah.
the last 5 or 6 years, I would say. But I'm not arguing with your figures there.
No. But there's a reason for that, Jerry, and this is it.
Because
Like,
I think what you're saying is right. Because every village had a just every
yeah,
village had a butcher shop. Butcher
yep.
shop is like going into,
Wholesaler.
someplace. Yeah, but like a butcher today is like a luxury
Yeah.
item for most people. Like it's like,
Same with fish.
do- yeah, and
But
same with fish.
no,
Um,
but I must say this to you now because this is really wind you up, right? So when I was in Baltimore fishing out of Baltimore, price of a kilo of hake, right, per kilo for the larger fish was 4.50 a kilo, and the smaller ones were 2.50. The
mhm.
price to the boat for that same hake now is around 5.50, and the smaller hake is around €3. So they've got a €1 increase in price, and then you look at the shelf price, and it's 22, 24, 28 euros a kilo. Fishermen's not getting that, like. And the reason why the fishermen are not getting that is the system that's orchestrated around it, because there's less fish, so it becomes scarce. But the fisherman is not getting the same rewards rising, so they're under more pressure. That's why you see people in the food industry, and I testify to that. When I started growing mussels, organic mussels, in 1988, we were getting £500 per ton. Pounds. That'd be around €650 when you take the translation. My son is doing it now. Is it 1988? What is it now? How many years? Is it the
That's nearly
20
pushing 40, another three. Like,
pushing
yeah,
40? His price is 850 to 1,000.
yeah, I get you.
Now, this is another bit. This because I know it because I was there. So Jerry, we filled the drum of 25 liters of diesel. We used to get it from Kieran Cotter below in Baltimore Pier, and I give him a fiver for 25 liters of agri fuel, right, to put in the boats. I go down to that man tomorrow. It's 25. euros for the same amount of oil. So the oil has gone up 5 times. Again, the fish went up €1, 20%. So we're being squeezed. On top of that, then the other countries have been given all the fish to catch. So the maths isn't there. It's fishermen are being, so we're being exterminated or genocide, whatever nasty word you want to use. But that is genuinely what's happening. And you hear fellas saying, "Oh, they're millionaires or billionaires or stuff like that." It's not true. These men have worked all their lives. They had to buy these boats that are getting more and more expensive. So when I started to build a boat, it would have been 1 or 2 million to build a boat. What's there now? But these boats are going up to 10 and 12 million now. And you don't take on these loans for a year or two. This is a lifetime. It's passed on to the next generation. And what people don't understand about fishing is that you have to meet a code of practice. So boats are underwater. You see them, they get salty and rusty and everything else. You have to repair it. Things wear and tear. So they're putting hundreds of thousands into their boat just to stand still every year. And I mean hundreds of thousands. Whereas if you had a factory and you put hundreds of thousands in, the value of the factory goes up. Whereas on the other side, the value of the boat goes down. It's like,
What numbers of people are left in the Irish fishing industry? How many are we talking? A few thousand, or is
active fishermen? Yeah. You're talking maybe 4,000, I'd say, maximum.
And what was that? Active. And what was that number when you were growing up? Would you say, had you any concept when you got into it first?
20,000, I suppose. I'll give an example of my experience in the industry, and I thanks for these questions. Brings back memories. We fished out of Baltimore, and during the winter time, like I said to you, you'd be seasonality. You'd try and get into the bigger boats. There was 30 of them one winter tied up in Baltimore. So I went around asking for a job, and I couldn't get on any boats because there was fellas waiting, queuing up to get on board the boats, right? 30 boats with an average of 6 men, we'll say, on board. So that was 630s, that was 180 people just in Baltimore alone in that section of fishing, just those boats, right? You go down to Baltimore now today, and there's 3 boats there with 18 men. So you've gone from 180 down to 18. The fish is still outside there. The boats are better. The life and working conditions are better. You have Wi-Fi and everything else when you go out and board the boat. If you were lucky, you had a JVC player and put in a videotape, you'd watch the same movie maybe 100 times. Do you know what I mean? So the life is better outside there now, and you can communicate to shore, and you've all the communications there. So once you get off the deck, and the crew quarters and the best of food now, in fairness, the lads are well treated like in the bigger boats. So that should be attractive. What's not attractive is the amount of time you spend outside there, the loss of family time, and birthdays, weddings. We heard about the GA fellas that these lads played a county final and their sister got married. So that's commonplace for fishermen, like. Have to go to sea, have to go out and earn a living. You try and work it, but if you've 3 months of bad weather and the week that you're to go out is the week of the wedding, fellas do you pay for the wedding, or do you go to the wedding and build up more debts? That's it. And then the weather get bad again, no money, have to pay for the boats. Like, I had a man from a factory that's working in the seafood industry, and he contacted me. He said his standing still charges around 600 grand before he puts any fish through the factory. That's his cost between all the bills and workers and everything. 600 grand. So he has to pay that. That has to be paid for. He's no choice.
There's just one question. Sorry to cut across you there. It's a question somebody's put through here in the chat, and it's to do with Norway and Norwegian waters. And I'll put it up there because it actually, I don't know if it's true or false what he's saying, but he's saying Norway refused to join the EU because they won't let any foreign boats take their fish. Is that correct?
Well, they do a deal. They call it the balance transfer. So the other countries do catch fish in Norwegian waters, and they catch fish in other fish waters. Now, again, these figures are startling, right? So they're true.
Okay, but they're in control of who fishes in their waters. Is that right?
Their exports last year in fish and fish products was 14 billion.
Right, okay.
They have the same amount of fish in their waters as we do, lads. But they do a lot of farm salmon now. I know there's controversy over that, but they do massive amounts of farm salmon. they're allowed to put farms outside there, whereas in Ireland you'll have fellas on the beach just saying you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you're harming the whales, the dolphins, whatever else. And look, that is a problem. I mean, that's another separate, but just some figures, right? So we get in return in the trade deal between Norway, we get 300 ton of cod, right? Out of 10,000 tons. So Europe gets 9,700, we get 300.
Where's this now?
In their
our
water.
Oh, in
No,
their
no, in
water.
their water.
What?
So
On
we
their
get
waters.
300. So one boat can go up and fish in Norwegian waters from Ireland, and when they give 10,000 ton of cod in their waters, we get 300. We just speak about Ireland, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to blue whiting, okay, the biomass of blue whiting that was allowed to be caught in the same year now with those figures a couple of years ago was 1.5 million tons. But most of that fish spawn and grow in our area. They breed in our waters. Yes, they move up into those waters as well. So 1.5 million tons, right? Our share out of that was 60,000.
Right.
So all the other countries got it. But here's the thing with Norway, right? The deal was that we'd go up and catch the cod above there. We'd also catch, I think it was 3,000 ton of Scandio herring. So 3,000 ton of Scandio herring, 300 ton of cod. And Ireland then in return allowed Norwegian boats to come into our waters of the blue whiting to catch 214,000 tons.
Who's negotiating in that case? Who's negotiating that? Is that Europe or is it Ireland?
Europe, and we're part of it. So
it's not us.
No, it's not us. But we stopped it. We kicked up in Europe, and we got our minister finally to stand up for us, and the commissioner brought him up, and we said, "This can't continue. You're prostituting out Ireland for the good of everybody else." Do you know what I mean? I know these words now. People will be kind of going, "Ooh, that's a nasty word." But it needs nasty words to come across to what's actually happening to your country and your people. It's not being told, we're genuinely losing our rights to fish in our own waters. It is criminal to what's going on, and to your own people. These are Irish families around our coastline. We're down now to around 2,000 registered boats for the small fellas, but of those boats, 1,100 of them at least are ornaments on people's gardens and in their sheds. I have one of them myself below parked up. We can't fish them because if I go out and fish and I'll be taking fish away from another fella and we'll both starve. So that's where we're at. We have 140, as I said, bigger boats. That's 140 families. Some people actually have 2 or 3 boats because other fellas couldn't fish them. So you're talking 100. There's only 100 families, fishing families left working those boats around the coastline. That's what we're reduced to. Yet we have the richest waters in Europe. We have companies in Europe that, to the benefit of our waters, are taking away hundreds and hundreds of millions of fish. Other countries are getting fat while we starve. Look,
what you're saying there is we have a 10 to 12 billion euro fishing product or business or industry in our hands per annum. We could have. What the potential of it is.
Yeah.
It's similar to Norway, but at the moment we only have about access to 10 to 12% of that fish.
Yeah, and it makes around 500 million a year. We've come down from 1 billion to around 500 million now a year. That's all that's there.
Right.
And these are shocking figures. Look, as I said, I'm an aquaculturist, right? I am waiting. I'm involved in aquaculture, as you said, for 40 years, right? And this is the way we're treated. The industry is treated, not just in Europe, but at home. So in those 40 years, I've been able to acquire a license for my farm twice. And those length of those licenses is 10 years. And my last license ran out 5 years ago. I've put in everything that I needed to put in. I hired an engineer, draft out what was required of me, put in all the documentation. And I'm waiting for 5 years for my son to get that license so that he can operate. Now, there is a temporary license in place, an interim license. But because I'm in a special area of conservation, any of the grant aid or any of the help that's afforded to everybody is denied to my son because he doesn't have the full license. And I can't do anything about it because I'm waiting for the minister and the people that are paid money to do their work to give us our license. Now, remember, I've changed nothing outside there, only I've improved the farm. I've gone from a product that had no certification. So the mussels are certified with MSC, right? Marine Steward Council, the top you can get. And I'm organic. I'm producing organic food and I still can't get a license inside in that area. And I haven't changed, only benefited, changed our practices. So we've reduced our plastic usage from where it was 100% down to 2% because we recycle. We keep using the same stuff over and over again. We use a cotton mesh that dissolves in the water. That's where we're at. So our rubbish has gone from, say, 30 ton or whatever down to a few hundred kilos. That's how we've adapted our business. But that's how the industry's been treated. I'm just one of these people. I'm representing fishermen now that have spent millions and millions of euros, and they're told, tie up to the pier wall, do not leave, do not fish. If you do, you will be arrested. And at the same time, they're looking across the bay to looking at these massive trawlers coming in, full of Irish fish, landed into the back of lorries and being exported out of the country.
Hold on now. Let me hold you there now. Two things I want to ask you based on just what you're saying is when they land the fish, when the farm boats land the fish, can they sell that fish in Ireland?
They are, because we don't have enough Irish fish to supply
so
the
we're
Irish.
So they're not
Just
alone.
straight to Dublin, inside in the back of trucks. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So this is crazy. Is this not crazy? Like that?
Yeah, it is.
So we can only buy fish. We're buying our fish harvested from Irish waters from foreign companies landing in our ports and supplying it to us.
Yeah.
This sounds just absolutely bonkers.
But it is. But it is. And you see, so when I go to Spain and go over there and we do the trade shows and everything else, I was told by one of the buyers over, Patrick, we're thinking of coming over and doing a deal with your fishermen to buy up everything that you catch and land. And I said, why? Because you're dropping the price of the fish over to try and sell it. And you're undermining our price in the marketplace, right? Crazy stuff, like. Because we're getting such a low price.
Oh, hold on now. This is a good point, Patrick, because this is how we starve ourselves to death, like in one sense. Like, what are they going to do? Only put up the price of our fish that they're catching in our waters?
Yeah. So when I was a kid, in between when I was went fishing, right, I worked in a small shop after school and stuff like that on weekends, right, from the age of 12. And it was a small shop now, mind you. So one of the things the lady that ran the shop, right, would do was send me into the supermarkets to do a price check on the other stuff on the counter. Yeah. So I'd come back, she'd be buying it. So she'd be competing with them. So she needed to know what her competitor was doing. Now, I guarantee I got some queer looks, lads, because they were like, is this full of shoplifting or whatever going on this? All I was doing was in the memory recording the prices, right? So I'll give you one example. So a bag of sugar, when I was inside in that shop in 1988, was 52 pence, right? And when sugar, and it stayed stable at that, its highest price for a kilo bag of sugar in Ireland went to 72 pence in the years I was there for the 6 years, right? So it stayed stable and it didn't change much. And I do the shopping and stuff like that. But when we stopped producing sugar in Ireland, the price doubled. You go in now and you have a look at the price of bag of sugar. That is exactly what you're saying, Gerry. This is
I'm living in one of the old sugar towns. There was only 4 of them.
Yeah.
And absolutely, like now I suppose just to bring this up to date and to tie it, I suppose, as we're finishing out, we're going an hour and 10, but we're going on another few minutes. There's a Mercosur deal at the moment that's going on, and you have the farmers with their tractors and their slurry spreaders in Brussels, and they seem to have caused a pause in whatever deal is going on with Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. Does that affect fishermen?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe you could go into a bit about that, and also a little bit what you're hoping to achieve or what you're hoping to achieve with Irish Southwestern Fish Products organization.
Yeah, basically, we want to survive. We want to keep as many boats going and try and ride out the storm. But our aim is to reform the common fishery policy, and very simply, we're putting a lot of work into this. And this is new now because we always had a band-aid over us, and the Hague preferences was that band-aid. We just managed to scrape by, and we'd trade fish with other countries, right? So answering your last question, that's all we're trying to do is survive. So the government has promised a financial package. And I keep saying to my lads, well, if we go out and fight, the government mightn't be our friends. So the way I describe it is I'm being asked to put my hand into a Rottweiler's mouth and slap him across the nose. Right? It's not going to end too well for me, right? So we're caught in an awful quandary. So we're asking the Irish South and West, we're on life support. And what the only way that we're going to survive is what happened in France happens here. Not the riots, not everything else, but people speak out. We need people to say Ireland should have, into the future, a fishing fleet. And you need to work with the likes of the Irish South and West and the NIFA and all the other organisations, all the small organisations, to put in place measures that will protect it for the future generations. That's what
the current policy, as I have understanding it from listening to you, is that the Irish fishing industry has been on the back foot on the defence for 40 years and more. There is no thought about what you just said there, creating an Irish fishing fleet that kind of goes on the offense of their own waters and takes it back and encourages the young people to go into the fishing industry. So I would imagine, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that what fishing vessels are left, there's probably quite a high percentage of non-Irish people working, in casual labor on these boats.
You can't entice young people in. It's not a life that's there. You have to have good rewards for people to be there. They can't come ashore not wondering whether they have a paycheck. They're share fishermen. So if the opportunity isn't there to earn, then they can't earn. Like, it's not like, so the boat goes out and the young fellow on board the boat is saying, shoot over there. We know the fish are there. I can't, because if I can't catch that fish. I have to go over here and I have to catch haddock or something else, because if I catch the bountiful fish, I'm arrested. And they're going, that makes no sense. I'm not doing this no more. So then you get, like Ireland, traveling all over the world to better themselves. You have people coming from economies that what we're earning here is a fortune. We've put in, and we've asked the government to put in working systems and, a typical worker scheme. So we guarantee their wage no matter what, even if they get paid before the boat owner. They get paid first. The diesel man gets paid first. The shop gets paid first. The last person to get paid is the person on the boat. But look, I want to bring it down to this. Brexit showed us that the common fishery policy laws were broken and they were set aside. The common fishery laws were to protect the coastal communities and the people of your coastal communities, the stocks in your waters, and the health of the oceans. And all three of them have failed, right? The common fishery policy has failed. If it continues looking at the trend, right, it's going that way. So we won't have a fishing industry. You don't need to guesswork this. The evidence is there. We're losing. And our government's cure to losing is destroy boats. We had them up in Cork. We showed people how good these boats were. And I was on them as we took them up the river in Waterford to take it to a metal yard where he just brought in a machine and ripped the boat to shreds, and she became scrap metal overnight. But that boat, to buy it, was worth millions. That man, because the system was set up, he got 600,000 for it, but he had to take it. He was driven out of his industry. There are families, this is documented, but it's against the facts, and the facts are, after Brexit, relative stability was broken. Other countries were robbing fish off other fellas, buying boats, like I said, the flag vessels. The legal entity doesn't stand, trust me, but we need to challenge it. And the only way you can challenge it is with the evidence. But we're poor fishermen, genuinely. There's no major wealth in the industry anymore. There's a lot of debt there. And I'm being negative now, and people are saying, sure, what's it for? So fish rejuvenate in the space of 3 or 4 years, where there was once no fish, the seas could be full. That's how fast these fellas recover. We own the waters, we own the real estate. We need to protect it and let the fish regrow. But you're going to have to pause it. You're going to have to stop what's happening. We've taken the pain. We've lost 63%. I did the figures. 63% of our fleet has gone in 20 years. How much more do we have to sacrifice as a country in our own waters before somebody stands up and says, no, no, this is wrong. This is us colonizing Ireland's waters, taking away their fish, and as a result, wiping out their fishing industry, their communities, these indigenous people. I consider myself an islander. My families goes back in our history, 5, 6 generations that I've gone back to. They all fished, even through the famine and everything else, right? That's my legacy. That's mine. My sons are in the industry. Why should it be okay for another country people to come in and take that from my generations? Why should our people allow it? We fought for our independence. We're giving it away with the pen now. I want awareness to be created, Gerry. This is factual. All the stuff I'm saying, I'll stand up in front of any judge or court. I'll produce the evidence. This is true. The Marine Institute bring out a stock book. So when you're asking about what do, we hold tough. We protect what we have. We change the laws in Europe because they're wrong. And I know people might be saying, this fella's just rambling on. Look, boil it down to this, folks. Russia invaded the Ukraine. They had a territorial dispute. Russia is now taking the resources and from the people, and everybody in Europe is up in arms about it. But on the water, the exact same thing is happening to us. These countries are coming in and taking our waters and taking our fish and taking our resources, and it seems to be okay. So the same people are standing on the same podiums, and on one side they turn sideways, say this is wrong, Russia's doing it wrong. On the other side, it's okay to do it to Ireland. And to change a 49-year-old in situ legislation and law, and they said, well, it was challenged in 1998 and there was a question mark over it, so we're allowed now to set that aside and take more of your fish. That's what happened this time in Brussels. People need to realize the escalation that's happened here and what it means. It means annihilation for Ireland. And I'm not joking, people. I'm telling you the truth. If this continues, the stocks will keep going down, less opportunities, and the boats will have to leave. But they will be Irish boats because, like I explained, the other countries have a cushion. They have multiples of the amount of fish we have in our own waters. In Monk, in Hake, in Whiting, in most of the stocks. We have 7% of the hake. It's 54,000 tons. We've won 1,700. I've shared this with Gerry. This isn't me saying it. This
No,
is
no,
the
no.
Institute are publishing this annually, and you can see the evidence. And I'm hoping the likes of yourself, Gerry, and other people will realize, just spread the word. Tell people this isn't about a rich fisherman with a big boat off the coast of Castletown Bay or Donegal or anywhere else. This is about those people and the future generations of fishermen having the right to go and catch fish, our fish, in our own waters. And that's what is genuinely at stake here. The farmers are highlighting it now, just back to Mercure. So if you start bringing in cheap goods that don't have to be regularized, follow the same rules and regulations here, sure, it is easy for the other fella to have an advantage and ship over their stuff, especially when their average wage is maybe 20 or 30 euros, or is what like it was when I said to you when I started in the mussels in 1988. They're going to beat us. They're going to force people who are on the margins already to leave the industry. And because there'll be no next generation to come in, then they'll have to leave. So if my sons and my things say, Dad, there's no money in this. There was when you started. There isn't for me. So I can't do this anymore. So there's nobody to come into the industry. You are eradicating us. You are destroying us. It is genuine genocide. That is the definition. Finding ways and means without even killing you to get rid of you. And that's it. You're ending a way of life, folks. You are. And I know this sounds crazy, and I hope I don't come across as crazy because it's the truth. This is not science fiction. This is reality now that's happening in Ireland. I ran for Europe. I tried to get this message across. And I'm going to tell you something with Mercure that I learned. Okay? So one of the safeguards for Mercure agreement was that Europe wouldn't promote the cutting down of trees and forestry by turning it into agricultural land. And how they did it, they said, if you do that, we will not buy the animals and the products that you grow on that ground. And that's fair enough. But we did the exact same thing in Europe when we started talking about our boglands and our peat grounds. When we label them as the same as the Brazilian rainforests, the people that have grown food and recovered those bogs now are in the exact same position. They could be told by Europe, you're in breach of these laws. You turned this environmental ground into agricultural land, same as cutting down the trees in Brazil. Do you know there's 2 million acres of that ground in Ireland?
Well, look, at everything seems to be getting us off our land and giving control of it to other people. And this sounds, from talking to you today, it's the same with the sea. Patrick, what I'm going to do is we'll leave it there for today. But what I would say is I definitely want to have you and a few others on from this industry over the next while, because I think some of the things you brought up there today, people will be kind of stunned to hear, and hopefully it might have bring a bit of attention to it. We'll see what we can do, but details about how people can, is there anything the general public can do in terms of what initiatives you have, or do you have Facebook pages and profiles like that in terms of this South and West Fish Producers Organization?
Yeah, we have a Facebook page that we give out information. Look, before we brought all the boats up to the river Lee and Liffey, and we just highlighted, we did a campaign. The media didn't follow us. I actually put myself forward as a European candidate to raise this awareness, and if I could get out there. And look, RTE didn't cover me 100%. We had a falling out as well over the 20 seconds they wanted to show. I said it wasn't good enough. But that's where it comes at, folks. You have to start talking about it. Your fishmongers, go in and buy fish. Ask them where it's coming from, by the way. Like anything that you eat. Is it Irish cod fish? And asking the restaurants, is this Irish? And can you get Irish?
Well, it could be, you see, we're getting conned in a sense, because we're being told, yeah, it's Irish fish, but is it Irish codfish?
Yes, by Irish vessels. Yeah. And just start asking the question. Like, talk about it. Just get the conversation going. Keep it going. If you have a mind, if you are one of these people that are get up and go, write a letter to the newspapers. Ask about this. Look at Gerry's podcast. Watch it again. Pick some of the things out of it. You'll meet your public representatives when they come around for election. It might be in 4 or 5 years' time. You'll have seen this. You'll have said, well, what's the state of the affairs now? What have you done? We can build a fantastic marine resource again, without question. I have no doubts in it. I've seen it up and down, but we need to get more of it back for our own people. We need to get a fair share. I'm not even asking for 50%. 30% would be a start. If we could double our share in our own waters.
The government needs to start investing in the idea of an Irish fishing fleet.
Yes, they have to decide. Two questions. One I asked after my trip to Brussels when I was there with the negotiations. And in fairness, I must give credit to Timmy Dooley. He's a minister in a long while. We got what we wanted. We wanted a minister of our own. He's a junior minister, but he's very hardworking. And he is the same mindset as us. He's working in a very difficult circumstance because there's other asks from other ministries and other areas of industry and economy, and we have to play nice in Europe and certain things. But one thing has to be brought across is the right of Ireland to have customs, heritage, and this going forward, and access to our own resource, right? So where we go with this is that we will be doing a campaign, but first we have to wait and see what our government is going to do. We're working with them. We can't jump ahead of them. So watch this space, please, folks. We have ideas. We will let Gerry know. We will be going into the mainstream media if we have to take out ads. One of the things that I will say and commend the farmers for, that I learned from my friend, Mr. Michael Fitzmaurice, and my new friend, Kieran Malooly in Europe, right, is that they are going to take to the streets. They are going to do a peaceful protest about the Mercure agreement. and I'm hoping to link in with them. I've asked my organization today, before this call, Gerry, would they be interested? Now, I haven't made contact with those two gentlemen, but I have their numbers. I have spoken to them in the past. They have been good representatives. Michael Collins is a neighbour of mine, the leader of the Independent Ireland, and he is very passionate about this. So that's where I'd say, lads, when people go to the streets and do that, even if they do upset your day or they're causing a little disruption, please think of the disruption that they're trying to protect and for your future and for your good, that you'll still have Irish food put in your plate. It will keep the prices down. You'll know where it's coming from. It'll be creating jobs in places where they're hard got, and you'll be keeping your rural communities alive. You genuinely will. We've lost enough shops and pubs and everything else inside. We've lost enough of our young people out of our rural communities. We have to start to rebuild. It's a fantastic country to live in, but we need to keep as many people in our rural communities as possible to keep rural Ireland alive. And it is under threat. It genuinely is. And you can't find more rural than along the shoreline for our fishermen. That's one sure fact.
Okay. Thanks. Well said, Patrick. Thanks a million, Patrick, for your time today, and wish you a Merry Christmas. And we'll just end the live stream there now, and we'll just go end.